Well, this is a remarkable evening and a remarkable trip, and came completely unexpectedly. I had just been extremely ill, and David Lenz decided that I was getting better fast enough for them to try to pull this off. I wouldn't have done it on my own, not out of less of a love for coming here and for seeing people, but because I was scared. I'm on dialysis. I keep myself on a short leash. I was scared what's going to be when I go to Florida, let alone if I go to Israel. Of course, it all worked out. It's not such a big deal when you get dialysis.
You go to Florida?
Yeah.
And I got this.
I'm turning 60, so I started thinking about Florida. On one level, Emily Moody, I wrote about 5 pages. So. סליחה, אני בחרתי לכתוב באנגלית, אז אני עובר לאנגלית. One of the things that struck me in thinking about Robert Frost's poem about, two roads, the Virgin and the Yellow Wood, was that the voice of the poet knew at the time that he was choosing one of those two paths, that in the future he would look back on it and know that has made all the difference, which is the final line of the poem. I know I should think of this ages and ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in the yellow wood. I took the road less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Who knows which choice in one's life makes all the difference? I could say my choice coming here, or my choice leaving here. Certainly my choice leaving here is determined a lot of things. And it's been very difficult for me to reconcile myself with myself. In the movie 1,000 Clowns, which if any of you haven't seen, I recommend. There's a scene in an abandoned Chinese restaurant, which is under Murray Burns, who's the main character, and he can't figure out what to do with his life or whether to go to work or not. There's a Chinese restaurant underneath, and he has a confrontation with his brother, who's lived a successful, if conventional life, and lives on Long Island. And the scene ends, in the scene, by the way, that won Martin Balsam an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. He says, "Yes, I am the best of all possible Arnold Burns." Tonight, on the eve of turning 60, I cannot say something equivalent. I am confronted almost daily with a part of myself, a voice telling me I should have remained in Israel. By the way, these discussions with myself are in Hebrew. There's a great story about this guy who survived the Johnstown, Pennsylvania flood, and then goes around making a living speaking to Rotary clubs and stuff, about how he survived. And then he dies and goes to heaven, and he's told, well, it's your first day in heaven, you're expected to make some remarks. What might you talk about? What are you thinking? What to say? And he says, well, for the last 5 years I've been talking about how I survived the Johnstown, Pennsylvania flood. And he goes, well, okay, but Noah's in the audience. Speakers tell that story when they want to tell people listening, you're smarter than I am. And what do I know to speak to you? And that's why I'm not going to speak about what I speak about and listen to about most of the time, which is Israeli politics, the situation, because who am I to tell you? I follow it from afar, but very closely. I read 3 Israeli newspapers a day. Boy, thank God for the internet.
Yeah.
Really, what a difference in life. So I'm not going to speak of it out. I'm going to speak more personally. One doesn't live one's life as a controlled experiment. I can't go back and try the other way. But in a life rich in experience, I am hardly free of regrets. I will say that the life I left behind and the imagination I would have lived had I remained in Israel was in some ways superior to the life I lived. Of course, the demons came along with us to America. They would have accompanied me in Israel had I stayed as well. What's that line from Gaddafi? As you ruined your life here, you will ruin it everywhere. I mean, I wouldn't have been strong enough to arrest the unfolding of what's happened in Israel over the last, 23 years. Things that matter to me outside of myself, the kibbutz, the labor movement, are not what they were, to put it mildly. I take no satisfaction. I'm very sad about it. I know that maybe Al Sfat Yam Yarden Kamo Ma'uma Lo Kara. It's possible that you can find some places where that Israel speaks to you and comes to you. Of course, my life wasn't a ruin. I raised 2 kids, and I reconnected with family. I rejoiced in private matters. Although in some flings as a journalist, I interacted and helped cause certain things to happen in larger reality. Still, I wasn't operating from the premise that I was committed to an ideal larger than myself and my family. I'm told that the movie A Serious Man, which I regret to say I haven't seen yet, is based in some way on Eov. And I often thought of Eov in the last 10 years as a way of trying to figure out why I was going through long and ongoing series of setbacks, mishaps, deaths, and disease. Of course, I also said, that wasn't it a test between God and the devil to see what would happen to Eov's faith. I didn't have that much faith to begin with, so I didn't know why they were doing this. I couldn't figure it out. It didn't make sense. And I used to say, as long as because his kids were also damaged in Eov, as long as my kids are all right, they can do what they want with me. Within 5 years, my stepmother passed, followed by my father. My marriage came to, as the French poet said, the end for which we were together. My sister died, and I was diagnosed with cancer. I've been through 4 major surgeries, the last one in November. It's strange to think of the body as a garment which can be torn apart at the seam and then stitched back together. I can't get rid of the damn thing, so I will probably be in crisis every 4 years or so, which I relate to as it's kind of like bombing Iran. You might get 2 years more. Is it really worth the hassle that it's going to cause? 3 years ago, my last kidney failed. And so tomorrow morning, for example, I will be doing dialysis. It's a life changer, thank you. Thanks for me. It also put me of a mind to think about the Yudlam and Peretz story, Bunch of Shvai, which I'm sure must be available in Hebrew. It's inconceivable to me, but it's not. And it's a great story about a kind of a small, unimportant person whose whole life is bad things happening to him, terrible things happening to him, terrible luck. He can't catch a break. And in the end, he's crossing the street of Shtetl, and a nobleman rides by with a carriage, and he gets trampled under the carriage, and he's killed. And he goes to heaven, and there's a trial in the heavenly court. Should he be admitted to heaven or not? And he has an attorney, and there's the prosecutor. An angel argues for Bunch of Shvai, and the devil argues, or is he called in the story, the prosecuting angel argues against Bunch of Shvai. And Bunch of Shvai wins, and he's admitted to heaven, and he's told, you can have anything you want now. You're in heaven. And he says, I'd like a cup of tea with a buttered roll. And Peretz's point was that if your life is crushed on earth, if you allow your life to be crushed on earth, as Joe Hill said, the idea that you'll get pie in the sky when you die is a lie. You have to fight for your life and your spirit while you're alive. By the way, the story ends in Marie Sirkin's translation, yes, that's Sirkin. And the prosecuting angel laughed a bitter laugh. Because the prosecuting angel knew that even though he lost the case and Bunch of Shvai was going into heaven, he had won because the spirit was crushed. I'm whining too much. Forgive me. I have 2 healthy children and 2 bodies not sold together. Life in many ways is quite good. I'm blessed in many ways for which I'm grateful. Besides the children, my daughter Anna will forgive me, I hope, for pointing out that she's here tonight. My hope is, for the most part, that I've lived as an honorable life and have so many enduring friendships to show for it. I guess I'm preparing my own defense in case I have to address that heavenly court one day. So I want to thank you all for being here. It is no small gift to me, and one that I accept with all due humility and gratitude. Thank you.